from the mind of Kevin Williamson and the director of some of those Universal Soldier movies. Okay, let's talk about it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of the Peacock original film Sick, the newest film from director John Hyams and is written by Kevin Williamson. Okay, spoiler-filled review. I'm going to talk about the twist that happened in this movie because, it's not a very good movie, but we'll talk about the twist that happened. So be aware there are spoilers in this review, but that will happen after my non-spoiler review area. So just make you aware, just going into this review. So set during the early days of the COVID pandemic, this movie is about two characters named Parker and Mary who are best friends who decide they're going to kind of hang out at their parents' or Parker's parents' house in the lake. In the process of everything, their friend slash boyfriend of Parker, who's played by Dylan Sprayberry, comes to stay with them, and it turns into, as it is a Kevin Williamson film, at least written by him, a slasher film, a film that there's an attacker for 89 minutes going after these individuals, and possibly reasons for why that is are not explained until the end of the movie. And so with that said, Sick is a film that, once again, written by Kevin Williamson, is a traditional slasher film with the reveal of the bad guy at the end. And it's set during COVID, as you could tell from my synopsis. It's a film that I don't know if I had high hopes for or high expectations because, these types of films are pretty much dime a dozen these days. There's always a new slasher film coming out every year, but this one has a little more pedigree because it is Kevin Williamson, who, once again, like I said, wrote Scream, wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer. He's very competent as a director. And so I went into this maybe expecting some fun, entertainment value. I didn't know what I was going to get. I really didn't know much about it outside of it being a COVID film, the early stages of COVID and stuff like that. And so with that said, for my non-spoiler take of this movie, it's perfectly fine. It's not a good film. It's not, a well-produced, directed film, but it has enough Kevin Williamson homages and ideas that it makes it a competent film, I guess you could say. It definitely has a message, a very hard-going message. And it's a film that, Gideon, Adlon, and Bethlehem do a pretty competent job as good as actresses. They have good chemistry. I don't think the character of DJ, who plays the main boyfriend character, is very good, but I think this is a movie that you could tell was very low budgeted. You could tell was, could be shot during the pandemic because there's only like 2 or 3 people in this movie plus the killer. And it's a movie that at least attempts to be interesting, at least attempts to be entertaining. It doesn't do it on like almost successful route because in 83 minutes, they had to do a lot of stuff to kind of move this movie along. And, it's a film that you pretty much can, the opening's a lot of fun. It goes places you expect, but also go places that you don't expect. It definitely has a very, very big message in the movie that you can kind of see coming from a mile away. But I think everybody in the movie is just having fun. There is 83 minutes of material here, and it does a pretty competent job in doing that. And, it takes place in one location for the most part. It doesn't add a lot of flourishes. And the killers, as much as I enjoy a good killer slasher movie, I think the fact that these killers are just in like black garb and black hoodies and stuff like that, you could tell the low budget nature, unfortunately. And it's unlike Scream, where you have like the really cool costumes and the really big set pieces. Like the next one, Scream 6, takes place in New York, and this one takes place in a lake house. So I mean, you could tell where the budget's going. But overall, I really didn't have a problem with this movie. I just think it is what it is. And that's pretty much where I'm going to leave in non-spoiler territory because there's not really much you could talk about without spoiling the movie, which I'm going to do here in a second. But if you want to end it there for my review, just overall, it's an entertaining film. It's not a high budget film. It's a slasher film with, some interesting messages, and however you look at those messages is how you're gonna feel about the movie, to be fairly honest. And that's where I leave it. That's where, if you don't want to know anything more, if you want to watch it, just leave it here at my non-spoiler sense of a review. So thank you so much for watching my non-spoiler review, and let's talk about spoilers. So Kevin Williamson is a writer he has a particular sense about him and how he writes and what he writes about and who he writes about. He loves writing about tragedy and characters, about individuals that go to extreme lengths to fulfill their purpose and fulfill their logic and reasoning. You saw that in Scream with the idea of, Billy Loomis and Stu, I can't remember what Stu's last name is, but you see, they deal with the mother of Sydney and stuff like that. And I Know What You Did Last Summer deals with, it's either the father or the son of the person that's killed. And there's just a lot of tropes where Kevin Williamson really is delving into human psyche and, what happens when somebody breaks in that human psyche and the human intelligence, stuff like that. And what was the breaking point of a human being. So this movie is set during COVID, and the whole thrust of the idea is what happens if somebody goes on a rampage of killing and goes on a vengeance quest because one of their family members is killed by COVID and they blame a particular individual. So at the beginning of this movie is very Scream-like, where this individual is basically through text, because this is an updated version of Scream, is basically stalked by an unknown assailant and is eventually attacked in his apartment and killed by this masked person. So it's very much in that Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer specialty where these things happen. And that's when we were introduced to Gideon, Adlon, and Bethlehem, Million, who are best friends who go to this cabin in the woods, this lake, the cabin on the lake or whatever. And it doesn't, it's not a very long movie. It's 83 minutes, but it basically is about two individuals that have two different ideologies in the COVID world. So it's basically two forms of the spectrum. And then we have a character named Dylan, DJ, who's played by Dylan Sprayberry, who basically comes in the mix, is kind of the individual that's just there to be killer fodder later on in the movie. Eventually, they are attacked by the unknown assailant, and then we find out there's two people. There's two assailants, and this whole movie from, I think, minute 40 on is just a slasher film where it's basically these individuals are attacked. They have no idea why they're being attacked. Maybe it's someone they know. It's just, you have no idea what's really going on. And, they have their sequences. They have, being chased through the woods, and the tire of the truck gets broken, and like I said, DJ gets killed, and all these two characters are just chased and, viciously damaged and hurt, stuff like that. Parker's character eventually gets the upper hand of one of the characters and pretty much beats him, and eventually Mary's character finishes the job. But it leads to Parker's character doing kind of like what Chunk did in the Goonies, where she beats up the guy and then she sees a car coming towards her. She tries to get in, and there's this really great moment with Jane Adams' character, who ends up playing a major role in this movie, where she's trying to get away from this assailant, and this character, Pamela, Jane Adams' character, is like, I don't know if I can let you in because of COVID. Are you safe? You might need to wear a mask. But then she gets in the car, and then she puts on the mask, and the mask, of course, has that chemical fluid that puts everyone to sleep when they kind of breathe it in, stuff like that. And you find out that one of the assailants is a father. The mother is the Jane Adams character. The father is actually played by Mark Menchaca. And the other assailant, because there was two assailants, is actually the son who was killed. And basically what this movie boils down to, these individuals had a son. Parker's character made out with on a TikTok video. I guess she was asymptomatic and she didn't get sick, but she affected their son, who died, and affected a bunch of other people. And it all, like I said, it plays into the idea of like, during COVID, you had the non-believers and the believers of the COVID pandemic. And this is exactly what it's playing into. Mary's someone who wears a mask throughout most of this movie. Parker is not. And it basically is a family trying to get revenge on the death of their son by killing the people that were involved with this, end of the world party of some sort. But as these movies do, the two characters, Parker and Mary, get the upper hand. They basically kill Jason's character by throwing him onto a antler statue thing, which impales him. And then Jane Adams, who they think is dead, is not dead, and they light her on fire and she dies, and that's the end of the movie. And like I said, it's only 83 minutes long, so you have to move pretty quickly. But like I already said, this is a movie about the pandemic and kind of the chaotic nature of the pandemic. And Kevin Williamson definitely has a voice and is very particular about, both sides of the pandemic were a mess, and it really shows. You see it from both sides. You see the crazy nature of the revenge. A lot of people who lost loved ones would like to get revenge on the people who didn't die of COVID and who affected them and stuff like that. And it's a movie that I don't think is successful in its nature of like, it's more worried about telling you about the bad nature of COVID than it is about the nature of the world going crazy, I guess you could say. And I think it's a movie that is trying to have a lot of fun, but it's also trying to have its cake and eat it too, and it just doesn't work successfully. I think half this movie is really tedious and boring, to be fairly honest. I think once it gets to the 40-minute mark and these girls are being chased after the killer finally, it just, I'm like, oh man, this is finally getting good, but you took half the movie to do that, because the first half of this movie is boring. It really is. There's nothing that happens. It's just introduction to characters, and when you have half your movie as set up, it doesn't entirely be successful. And I think that's a problem with Kevin Williamson. Sometimes he takes a little too long in his scripts to get going. But I think this is a real big problem with this movie. And I think as fun as Mary and Parker are, I think it's just they become stereotypes as the movie moves along, to be fairly honest. And, you know, I like Jane Addams. I think Mark Menchaca is a pretty decent actor. But it's a movie with a very clear message of what it's trying to do, and like I said, it's not entirely successful. I don't think it's well directed, to be fairly honest. I don't think the violence is that good. This is definitely not Wes Craven directing this movie. This is a director that did Alone, which was a horror film that came out a couple years ago, as well as some Universal Soldier movies. But for a movie that's on Peacock, like I said, I think you'll have some fun with it. I think the reveal is a little more twisty than I was expecting. I was expecting it to be somebody they knew, but not the family members. This feels like Kevin Williamson's doing Scream 2 again. But overall, I think it definitely is just, for 83 minutes, it's not going to hurt your life or waste your time. It's just not the greatest of films. So, and with that said, that is going to be my spoiler-filled review of this film, which is Sick. Like I said, it premieres on Peacock today. Yeah, there's not much else I can say about it. Like I said, the killers are the family members of someone that Parker infected and killed. So not like physically, just unfortunately, it was just the chaotic nature of the pandemic before, everything got, a little bit cured and stuff like that. So anyways, with that said, that'll do it. That'll be my take on Sick, non-spoiler and spoiler review sense. Thank you so much for watching. Comments below. Did you see this movie? What did you think of the overall twist and all that good stuff? But otherwise, if you like what you see on the channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button, and we'll see you guys for the next review. Peace out.